You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again to commence our broadcast week here on the Options Insider Radio Network. Yes, it is time for the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever compelling, at least we tend to think so, especially in these difficult and trying times, Options Insider Radio Network. Remember, for all of you on-demand folks, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing it, and whatever platform you get the show on does help the legion, the plethora of new people joining the network every week. Just find a path to our door. These are crazy times. People are looking up info on these markets, on volatility, on options. Who can blame them? So your modern reviews, you can argue, are more important than ever. And of course, if you want to join us for all the fun throughout the week, great pro Q&A coming up tomorrow. I won't reveal who it is yet, but it's a fun one. And then, of course, we have oddities, all the giveaways, all the other fun stuff, live streams throughout the week for every show that we do. TheOptionsInsider.com/secret club is the place to go to begin your journey to the dark side. And of course, however you listen, live, after the fact, keep sending in those questions, those comments, those insights, those pearls of wisdom. We do love to hear from all of you folks out there. Remember, don't post the questions in your iTunes review, for example, because we don't tend to see those in a very timely basis. But if you want to send a question, social media, questions, theoptioninsider.com. Of course, live chat, if you're listening there. That's the best way to get at us. And you know what? It's that time, listeners. We have to commence our broadcast week. We have to do so in style. We've been doing a lot of 80s wrestlers lately, and I, of course, love that. We all love that. And we will get back to that. But we started this off actually naming that epic 80s tune. Could be from a show or from a movie. And given what we all saw unfolding over the past week and over the weekend, this footage coming out of Ukraine of these pretty determined, pretty heroic fighters against a overwhelming Russian invasion, it got me thinking about another film that came from the 80s that also depicted heroic partisans fighting against overwhelming odds against the massive Soviet incursion that was occurring. I'll just leave it at that. You probably already know where I'm going. See if you can name this perhaps most 80s of movies. It's up there. It could not exist in any other era, listeners. It is a thing unto itself. Can you name the movie from this theme song? defy you. Does that not get your 80s American blood pumping on that one? I did watch this film again over the weekend for the first time in quite some time, many decades, and it is, shall we say, an eye-opening experience. Arguably more thematically resonant now than it has ever been. Let's go around the horn. I shall now open it up. We shall play the old buzz-in game. I would be surprised if both of them don't know this, but we shall see. Let us open it up now to both the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com, as well as the uncleist of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Whoever can buzz in first and name this epic 80s film shall be today's winner. When I say 3, 2, 1, go.
Buzz.
All right, there you go. Here, I had a feeling. I was hoping at least you would know this, Mr. Meatball. I would be very disappointed if you would not. So, Mr. Meatball, can you name this epic piece of 80s American propaganda?
I mean, if it's not Red Dawn, then I'm going to be very disappointed.
It is the most Red Dawn. It is. This is a film unto itself. We joke about the 40s, how they had propaganda films here and in, Germany and everywhere. Red Dawn is a propaganda film, if ever there was one. It is an amazing film on many levels. It is a disturbing film on many levels. You watch it now as an adult, some of these lessons and messages ring a little bit differently than they did when you were a kid. But nonetheless, Mr. Meatball, A, congratulations. B, welcome to the show. And C, what are your enduring memories of this most 80s of 80s movies?
Oh, who is the girl who blows herself up at the end of the movie to kill the...
Well, there's two... Actually, everyone in this is 80s famous, but there's Leah Thompson and Jennifer Grey. Both of them are in it. Yeah,
Leah Thompson is the one that
she blows herself up. Jennifer Grey.
Those Russians.
Jennifer Grey blows herself up to take the Russians with her. Yes, which is the way any red-blooded American girl wants to go out, right? Taking the commies with you.
Absolutely. And then, the closing scene with Patrick Swayze carrying, I believe, Charlie Sheen, who's, half dead. And,
spoilers for a 40-year-old movie, but yes.
Respectfully, show their respect. They're not.
They earn his respect. Yes, they earn the respect.
That's pretty good. And then who can forget the? I was actually reminded of this today because I forgot Valentino's lunch for preschool, so I had to drive it over. They were outside, and when I was leaving, he hugged me between a fence for the playground, and I was.
Did you scream "Avenge me"? Avenge me.
Yes. Except he said, feed me instead of avenge me.
Yes, that scene alone. Oh, yes. One of my favorite 80s scenes of all time is C. Thomas Howell. I don't care. Fight me. His greatest role ever. His first probably role ever. When he's carving the notches in his gun. And Powers Booth says to him, all that hate's going to burn you up, kid. And he just looks at him and says, it keeps me warm. And he's carving the notches in his... Oh, it's fantastic. By the way, I will admit I discovered something. And this is a complete Red Dawn tangent. I apologize, listeners. Very thematically appropriate, though. We'll get to the trading, don't worry. But all my life, I've had a begrudging respect for Michigan because of the Wolverines. And that is the whole point of why they are the Wolverines. And I just thought that was extremely cool, that they're the Wolverines. As a kid, we'd always yell Wolverines when we're out there playing or doing whatever the hell we were doing. It was just a cool thing. I discovered, much to my dismay, that it was initially set in Calumet, Michigan, and then during production, for whatever reason, they decided to change it to Colorado. So they made up the fictional town of Calumet, Colorado. And because you watch the movie, like, these don't look like they're in Michigan. So the entire premise of them being the Wolverines is for naught. It's actually supposed to take place in Colorado. Does that spoil your enjoyment of the film at all, Mr. Meatball?
Not at all.
Because it does make the Wolverines kind of like a non-thing now. But they were the Wolverines. That's the whole point.
Oh, no. No, I love it. I just, it's just such a great movie. How could you not?
The opening scene where they're describing the murderous rampage of the Mongols and then the paratroopers descend from the sky. This may be the least subtle movie in the history of film.
I mean, it is. Yeah. Subtlety is not, if you're looking for subtlety, go somewhere else.
Go elsewhere.
It's pretty darn spectacular.
If you want to see Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen and C. Thomas Howell and the ladies just kicking butt, then this is the film for you. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, I'm in a bit of a tizzy, but, this film does it to you. What are your thoughts, if any, on the epic epic 80s film that is Red Dawn.
I have to say, I've never seen the film. I was busy watching Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo beat the crap out of Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik at the time, I guess.
I don't know. So I may have had, how did I accidentally hit that hang up button? I don't know. You never, in all the years since, have never crossed paths with the 80s mega film that is Red Dawn, sir?
No, I have not.
Okay, in the modern environment, you need to set aside some time and just watch it. It's definitely of its time. They will get an appreciation. I will say this. They will get an appreciation for the what we all lived with in the 80s of this constant omnipresent threat of Soviet attack. Imagined or real, whatever it was there. It's easy to put that in context. As we try to put these markets into context, let's do it. It's time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show we break down what the heck is trading, what is lighting up our tapes out there, and everything. You know, it's about another interesting one, to say the least, out there. Of course, I mentioned we saw all the dire news coming out of Ukraine, and then actually maybe some of the hopeful news out there. It looks like maybe they're going to be able to put up a bit more of a resistance than people initially estimated. So perhaps good news, or perhaps not. We don't know how these things unfold over there. Obviously, a shooting war in Europe, again, never a good thing. But the markets have been struggling to deal with this for some time. And it looks like they were going to come in today taking up quite the drubbing. And they were for a while there. You know, S&P was off substantially, Dow off about 500 plus points. And then we saw, as we are wont to do a lot these days, starting a bit of the reversal, the old BTFD crowd kicking in there. And it seemed like maybe they were going to carry the day. Perhaps, who knows? Even by the time we launched the show, would one of the major indices be back in the green? Maybe NASDAQ leading the charge to the green. We have seen that play out recently. And yet, as we kick off the show and got carried deep into our Red Dawn incursion there, we have seen the worm kind of turning yet again. As you kicked off right a few minutes ago, we saw the NASDAQ down about 0.33% again. S&P closing in on 1%, about 0.9%. The Dow off over 1%, about 1.1%. So we have seen vol was starting to creep back down, now starting to creep back up. And when we kicked off things, the VIX was at about 31.25. That puts it still down from last show, but not as much as it was even a little while ago. It's down about 2.5 points from Thursday's show. VVIX was at about a 122. That puts it down 13 points from Thursday's show. VXX was at a 24 even when we commenced operations. That's down about 2.25. And UVXY catching a bid, which is, challenging out there is actually still down, but down about 2.5 points when we kick things off. Actually ticking up. It's almost up to 18 now. So, interesting stuff. And vol Q, of course, the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ 100. That was at about 30.5 when we kicked off the show. That's still down about 4.5 points from where it was on Monday. But wait 5 minutes and all those numbers will change. Mr. Meatball, you are our triumphant victor today, sir. If you have any other thoughts you want to share on the 80s epic that is Red Dawn, have at it. B, corollary, have you ever seen the sequel? I never have. Came out in 2012 with the guy who plays Thor. I can't imagine ever making a sequel to such an 80s film, but I guess it exists. And then C, if you are so inclined, what's catching your eye in the market, sir?
I definitely have not seen the Red Dawn remake or sequel or whatever they want to call it. Why would I when a perfect movie already existed? And I will say that, this market is still in a lot of flux. A lot of things that were going to happen were just kind of fast forwarded by Ukraine. Oil was going to 100 and probably 120. Ukraine is speeding that up. Nat gas was going to go higher. Ukraine is speeding that up. The S&P was going to get softer. Ukraine's speeding that up. Now we've obviously started to, kind of spin our wheels here. But if you look at the way volatility has been moving over the last few weeks in both oil and in VIX, you have to ask yourself whether we are in a position to see volatility really, spike out here and totally blow off the top and things to fall apart, or whether we're going to turn around. And over the next day or two, I think we're gonna figure that out. But it definitely. Right now, we are set up for a potentially really dangerous move lower. We're going to have these day or two where we get a violent rally, but that's what happens in a bear market, and this feels very bear market to me.
It does have a whiff of that. It does seem like, at least for now, the BTFD crowd has exhausted themselves. But we all know just wait 5 minutes. There's always more bullets in the chamber for that crowd. We could end up rally-ho on the day. We have seen crazier things. Let's go out to the land of Uncle Mike, where, alas, he has not seen the crazy thing called Red Dawn. Might be appointment viewing. By the way, kind of hard to find this film these days, listener. It is not on any major streaming service. And even to find it, to kind of rent it or buy it if you want to go on like a Prime, it's kind of hard to find. It's buried in there. It's interesting, shall we say. Took a little bit of an effort to find this one. So, Uncle Mike, if you do want to watch it, got to do a little bit of effort. Probably going to have to pay because you cannot find it for free anywhere. The epic treatise that is Red Dawn. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, as we have a Red Dawn on the markets, what is lighting up your tape, sir?
Well, a couple of things. First off, we finally had a little bit of a rally in the treasuries and the 10-year. So that is actually moving up a little bit today. So definitely noticing that. In terms of the S&P right now, we're down roughly 1% on the day. So what's really lighting up my tape, or really what I'm seeing, is that last night the S&P was down roughly 120 points. And so it's like a repeat of the first night that the Russians went in. Is that we had a big drop off overnight, and then once cash trading started, or as it got a little bit closer, buyers have come in. And so every time so far in the last week or so, since the Russians actually crossed the border, buyers have come in to save this. And so, just to add to Mark's point, at what point are they going to stop saving the pullbacks? And so I think right now is definitely a time to be very cautious in terms of your shorter term trading if you're a bull. And I think that it's really makes sense to where, if you're debating over whether I should hedge this or maybe take off some risk off the table, if you're kind of on the borderline with that, then it's probably wiser to be a little bit more cautious at this point in time. Reason being is that I'm not sure if this is the time that we're going to have a violent rally to the upside, although anything's possible, of course. But for right now, we had this problem, or the markets were going down before Russia was on the map. Not before Russia was on the map. They've been on the map since the beginning of all maps. But before this conflict was even on everyone's radar. So I think it's important that you remain cautious at a time like this. Overall, I believe that the next levels that I'm concerned with the S&P are 4,000, and then roughly 3,700. And 4,000's a large, big milestone-like number. And 3,700, it's around the low, or around the close of the 2020 level. So those are the two numbers with which I'm watching right now. And by doing the math, they're kind of a ways down. So definitely have a lot of concerns over this market right now. And caution is the way to go right now, in my opinion.
I know in the past, Uncle Mike, you've toyed with dipping your toes in, maybe selling some put spreads to the downside or something along those lines. Have you been so inclined in these markets at all, or is there enough maybe potential concern that you haven't even done that?
I still have I had a 3-month put spread on that I started off with in January, and I've rolled it down a couple times. I haven't rolled it down yet in the last week or so, but it's been a 3-month out put spread, just a very small position from the standpoint of deltas, just because I have just something on the table, so to speak. And the garbage put spreads that I talk about hedging them on the weekends, paying a penny to hedge them and that type of thing. I've definitely been buying a lot of garbage lately, but for right now, I'm just going to hold on to that. I'm not going to be selling anything more or doing anything like that. I'm just going to ride this one out. But in the meantime, I'll be burning up those pennies every weekend and buying that garbage. So my rule of it is that if it comes within 100 points of the short strike, at least, or about that, I should say, there's a little bit more to it than that. But if it comes within 100 points of the short strike, I got to roll it out. It's very conservative. It's very much something to where I don't want to mess around with, but I'm not looking to hit a home run on. So for the time being, I'm just riding out my boring put spread.
Nothing like a little bit of S&P garbage to liven things up. Let's see if the overall markets, at least from a volume perspective, are getting livened up today. We do know that a little bit of dark side on the markets tends to drive some paper, and we are actually seeing some decent paper out there right now. VIX just a tick shy of 300,000 contracts, about 298,000 contracts. You may say that doesn't sound like a ton, but we have seen that ADV come off a ton. In fact, it's come off almost 100,000 contracts, 93,000 contracts since our last show. It's down to 606. So we're at pretty much exactly half of a day's worth of volume right now. So again, that 750, kind of hard to sustain that over the long term. We've already come off about 150,000 contracts from there. But right now, looking pretty robust. Good chance we'll beat that ADV, even especially if this dark side continues out here on the markets. We all know that likes to add a little bit of volume to the VIX front. Out there on SPY, no slouch there either, closing in on 5 million contracts already, about 4.92 million right now. The ADV right around 7.4 million. That one really hasn't budged. So SPY has held steady even as VIX has come in a bit from a volume perspective. The S also closing in on 1,985,000 contracts right now. The ADV right around 1.75 million. That's ticked in a little bit, I think, but not a ton. I think it was about 1.8 million on the show last week. And small caps, at least the IWM flavor, hanging out at about 468,000 contracts right now. Closing in on the halfway point, pretty close. We're at about 945 right now. So that has come in a little bit as well. That was north of 1 million not too long ago out there, but still extremely elevated. You know, we saw the ADV and IWM not too long ago was in the 500,000 range. So that's quite the boost in small cap land. And given how much they're moving of late, kind of hard to argue with. Let's get out to the single names. Let's see if it's one of those 300K days to break into the top 10 from a single name perspective. And the answer is no. You may be surprised by that. It actually is, I guess you can call it a decently active day, but not blowing the doors off. Number 10, once again, the reigning king of the apes, AMC there at number 10, 233,000 contracts. Up almost $1, about 5.5%, 1860 and change right now out there. So AMC getting a bit of a lift today. Got up to about 19, almost 1930 today. So apparently all this action in the market is good for theater chains. Who knows? It's hard to really draw any sort of parallels with what happens at AMC and anything rational. But hey, over the past week or so, they've been back on the radar in a little bit more aggressive way. Number 9, our old friend Bank of America, one of the what used to be the symbol twins, not so much anymore. I don't really see Boeing in the top 10 much anymore. Number 9, Bank of America, 242,000 contracts. Number 8, Palantir. We're just talking about this on Options Oddities. Is it time to sell some puts out there? Some folks have. We were talking about actually some folks got into some pretty juicy levels for the March 10 puts. I think it got them off for 40 odd cents or so. So some folks were out there looking to perhaps catch a bit of a bounce in Palantir, and it has bounced up about another 25 cents or nearly 2% today, trading right around 1170, and good for number 8, 244,000 contracts. Number 7, let's back out to electric vehicles. Lucid Motors, 247,000 contracts. Number 6 is SoFi. I haven't seen them in the top 10 in a little bit, but they're back there today. Let's see, 249,000. So we're at number 6, listeners, and we're not even at 250,000. We're a tick under it still. So that kind of shows you maybe a bit of a deceptively light day out there. SoFi up 75 cents, so about 7%, $11.50 right now. So SoFi having a nice pop out there. Interesting. Number 5, it's a day that ends in Y, so Facebook's going to be up there these days. Facebook coming under a little bit of pressure, I think it's safe to say, of late. Today, also feeling a little bit of pressure, back down about 0.75%, right around 1.5 points or so. After trying to rally earlier, they got up to about 212.60 odd. Now it's down to 208.80. So it has given back some of the love. It can't really manage to really catch too much upside lift out here right now. 267 for number 5 for Facebook. Number 4, it's NVIDIA. AMD and NVIDIA kind of hang out. They have like the 3 and 4 spots kind of on lock, and that is the case again today. Number 4, NVIDIA, 296,000. Number 3, got to go all the way up to number 3 before we even break 300K, listeners. So kind of a weird day. That gets us to AMD, 505,000 contract. Doesn't matter what the crisis is, what the event is, what's going on in the market. AMD is going to be somewhere around 3. NVIDIA is going to be somewhere around 4. They're both going to be somewhere between 3 and 400-something thousand. Today's actually a pretty heavy day for AMD. 505,000 contracts is a lot for them. So, yeah, that's that is have it on lock. Nothing really can seem to shake them from those spots. Number 2, yes, I said number 2 is Apple, surrendering its crown today as the king of the options markets. They're off about $1 or a little over 0.5%, a little bit shy of 164 right now in Apple land. 606,000 contracts on the tape for them. And then number 1, once again, kicking Apple to the curb. It's the old Tesla, 971,000 contracts, up a whopping 7% or about 57 handles today. So Tesla, one of the NASDAQ names that has caught a bid and has not surrendered it. It was down, let's see, it was 8:15 this morning. So yeah, it's had a nice pop, 50 handles. since this morning. So nice run for Tesla. That's generating some paper, closing in on 1 million contracts. That's really the only thing that is today, which is kind of interesting. Let's get out to the earnings calendar, see what we got this week. Still some big names popping off. We got Zoom today, HP today, Target tomorrow, Domino's, the Pizza tomorrow, Kohl's, AMC, probably why they're back on our radar again so heavily, Salesforce and Nordstrom's. Wednesday, we've got Snowflake. Remember them? They were a hot IPO for a hot minute. Then they seem to fell off everybody's radar. Everyone moved on to other names. But Snowflake was a hot one for a while. They're back again on Wednesday. Dollar Tree, Abercrombie and Fitch, and American Eagle, and Victoria's Secret, a trifecta for the meatball. All names he loves and watches very, very vigorously. And Splunk. Thursday, we've got Best Buy, we've got Kroger's, BJ's. So if you like your supermarkets and Big Lot stores, in fact, Big Lots is on Thursday as well. So those types of stores. Then Thursday is your day. You got Marvell, Costco as well, Gap, and Broadcom, and even Duolingo for those out there looking to learn the language. And Friday, everyone's favorite, Hibbett Sports. So some big names still popping off out here. We have the most recent, actually hot off the presses, right as we're speaking right now, earnings move results, and earnings season reports from our friends over there at Orat's Land. So a lot popping off out there in the earnings front today. Let's see. Let's go to see if we can pull up a couple of these really quickly. Got some weird ones popping off this morning. So let's keep on rolling into the report, because that's kind of, I know a lot of you are asking about that as well. How is the earnings season report looking right now? And it's looking kind of interesting right now. We're back in the green, which is good. So back in the green on the season. Will we stay there? We had dipped below it after last week was looking kind of apocalyptic. And back in the green, also over the average right now, which over the last 3 years has averaged out to about 83% for a season. We are above that. So that is good to see. We shall see if that can continue, or this week we'll drag it back to the dark side. In terms of earnings trades, we've got selling a straddle in Zoom out there today. We've got buying a calendar in BMO, Target, selling a straddle in Target as well. So a bunch of interesting buying and selling and buying of calendars and straddles out there today. So get out there, check out the earnings trades report if you have not done so. Let's look at some of the names that are popping off here really quickly to get some of these. Let's go to Zoom. Zoom is at 125.32, and they're popping off today after the bell. They're pricing in 23.29. In the past, they've moved 16.78. That makes more sense. I thought Zoom would be pricing in a little bit more juice, and they're actually pricing in a lot more juice. Let's go to Target before the bell on the first. Almost $200 is where they were trading as of this report. They're pricing in 13.50. In the past, they moved 14.61. So a little bit less juice out there in Target land. Let's go to AMC. 17.66 is where they were trading as of this report. They were pricing in $2.50. In the past, they've moved to $1.33. So they're pricing in more juice in AMC. Can you ever argue against more juice in the reigning king of the apes? I don't think so. Let's go to Box. They're after the bell on the second. 25 1/3. They're pricing in $1.96. In the past, they've moved to $1.43. So a little bit extra juice out there in Box as well. Let's go to the former hot IPO. Let's go to Snowflake. They're on the second after the bell. 269.5 is where they were trading as of this morning of this report. They were pricing, they were pricing in $30.50. In the past, they've moved 17.22. Wow. That's a lot of juice, listeners. I haven't really looked at Snowflake in a bit. I'm going to have to put them back on my radar this week. Seems like they have some action afoot this week. Let's go to... There we go. Let's go out to Best Buy. They're on the third as well. 95.83 is where they were trading this morning. They're pricing in $9.25. In the past, they moved about $7 exactly. So a lot of extra juice out there in Best Buy as well. All right, one last one. Then twisted my arm. Let's go to Costco really quick. 517.5. They're pricing in $18.65. In the past, they've moved $10.83. Wow. That's a heck of a lot of extra juice in Costco as well. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So some people think maybe earnings season winding down. These numbers would argue otherwise, listeners. Come check them out. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go. Meanwhile, we got to get on out of here and into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
listeners, let's get into it. Let's mix it up with a little bit of the old odd block. Let's kick things off. I do believe this could be a newcomer. I don't recall looking at this one. At least it has been. It's been quite some time. This is Goldfields Limited. Ticker symbol GFI. Take any guess what they do. Yes, they are a gold miner out there. Trading right now $13.90, up about 70 odd cents or a little over 5% on the day. Spoiler alert, the latter part of last year and beginning of this year have been pretty good for this name, but the rest of the year has been kind of interesting. It started off well below where it is right now a year ago. It was 816 when we kicked off March a year ago. Had a nice rally early on in the year, got up to 12 and about a quarter on May 26th, and then pretty much gave it all right back, got back down to an 8 handle in June, bounced around there for a while, dipped briefly into a 7 handle in September. And then from that nadir, 775, which was the low for the year on September 29th, it turned right around, rallied up to 1134 on November 30th, gave some of that back, got back to a 9 handle briefly in December, and then it started bouncing. And then by February, really, it took its next leg up. It started popping from about 1032 all the way up to where we find it right now. Got up to, looks like 1419 earlier today. That's the high for the year. So we're hanging out right now, listeners, in 52-week high territory. We were just debating, the performance of gold and the metals on TWIFO last week. What are your thoughts? Has gold underperformed? Has it met your expectations in the past year, during this recent crisis, since the start of the pandemic? There's a lot of different frames of reference you could look at it through, but in the last month or so, you can't argue that Goldfields Limited hasn't brought the thunder. And it seems like, Mr. Meatball, somebody is looking for perhaps that thunder to continue. We first noticed what looks like about 2,500 of the Jan 2023. So we're going out a ways, close to a year here. 20 calls. So that's quite a bit upside. We're at the 52-week high already, which is 1419. They want another about 6 handles over the course of the past year. They paid, looks like 90 cents. They lifted the offer for these 2,500 times. The stock was a little bit higher. Stock was about $14 and change when these went up. And then we also saw going up. Actually, before these, we saw a block of about 1,000 going up for 85 cents, and they came and bought more, 2,500. So it's like a total of 3,500, close to 4,000 on the day of these Jan 2023 20s. And then also, looks like about 20 minutes later, someone came in and also pretty much lifted the offer on 15, almost 1,600 of the Jan 17s. Now, there's no spread tag on these. It doesn't look like they were immediately related paper. I don't see. I'm going to look and see. I don't think anything came in late. But it looks like it could be just more call palooza here. It could be just additional legging. Could be other folks just piling into this. It could be completely unrelated but suspicious paper. Either way, there is a bit of a call palooza afoot out here in GFI, especially for this name, which doesn't exactly light the world on fire when it comes to options volume. Let's see, what is the ADV out here? Actually, it's 3,000 contracts, so we're talking more than a day's worth of paper, but a little bit more than I expected. I was expecting maybe a couple of thousand out there. So, Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts on someone coming in for a bit of, looks like some long-term upside love here in everyone's favorite gold miner, GFI?
Yeah, well, if you look at what's going on in inflation and you look at what is going on with the dollar and with the Fed raising rates, you got to ask yourself, does that make some sense? And the answer is, yeah, it probably does. So, we've been waiting for gold to make a move, and it maybe has finally started that move. And that is why we're seeing this type of paper. And it is a long-term play on gold miners. You're going to start seeing some consolidation there, some upside. This is just another trade that makes sense in the bullish case of gold.
Let me ask you about that bullish case for gold. As I mentioned, we've been kind of debating gold's performance recently, and indeed going back to the start of the pandemic out there. What are your thoughts? Has gold underperformed, outperformed, met your expectations? What are your thoughts on precious metals over this past crisis, the past year since the pandemic, however you want to cut it up?
I think by any measure, it's underperformed, but we're starting to see it start to get some teeth here. And that is, if you look, crypto, not a safe haven. where are you going in stocks right now? You're not going to banking. You're not going to, you're not going into tech, maybe utilities. You can go into energy strong today. So really, if you, and the dollar, who knows? So where are you going to go if you're safe with inflation? The way it is, the only real option is some of these precious metals, gold and silver. And as I said, they're finally starting to show some teeth here and moving higher. Because if you're not in commodities and gold and oil, you are, and utilities a little, you're really not seeing anything positive out of this market. There's nowhere to hide. And so people are moving to gold. People are moving into volatility.
Two interesting places to go. Yeah, you're right. Gold's certainly getting some teeth now. I guess better late than never. Keep an eye on these. Obviously, this person wants gold to get a lot more teeth over the course of the next year. What do you guys think? You think GFI has another, nearly it's like $7 in it to run here? That'd be interesting. Our friend here thinks so. Intriguing stuff. Let's go on out now. Let's pay off some of the recent paper we've seen coming across our radar, because it is a surprisingly light day, other things considered in the single name space out there today. Let's go back all the way to the heady days of January 31st, listeners. Can you even remember that far back? Pre-invasion, we were all so young and innocent. And we were talking at the time, listeners, on the show about what looked like a pretty sizable line in the sand in everyone's favorite name out there. This is good old Pags Seguro, ticker symbol PAGS, PAGS. At the time, listeners, we profiled 8,240 of the Feb 17 half puts. It's like someone came in and drew up a line in the sand at the 17 half strike. They sold them 8,240 times for 36 cents. It was right off the bid. The stock was $21 exactly when this trade went up. We looked at that and we thought, it's interesting. It's not that super aggressive. I mean, it's got a little bit of a room to run. He gave himself nearly 4 handles to the dark side, so not terrible. He only got 36 cents for it, but it's a decent amount of vol. And Pags can move, but it looks like this might have been a decently, not terrible one. We've seen worse lines. We've seen people doing daily ones for nothing recently on shows like Oddities and stuff. So this is certainly not in that camp by any means. And yet, and maybe this is a bit of a sign of things to come too, because how many line in the sand puts did we talk about for size last year on the Odd Block, listeners? And I can probably count on one hand the number of those lines that were actually crossed. Fast forward to 2022, and this person got their fingers burned out here in PAGS because this line was crossed pretty hard. The stock ended up closing at $15.73 on expiration, listeners. So they sold the 17 half puts. So they were out almost $2, about $1.88 on these puts at the end of the day. These puts were still open going into expiration. They did not take these bad boys off. So they were wearing this. So hopefully they wanted themselves a little bit of stock because that's what they got. And it looks like right now, actually looks like a little bit of a bounce out here. Earlier this morning, it looked like there was sometimes the stock can pop after they get it and maybe makes up for some of those losses. This morning, PAGS was actually a lot lower. So it seemed like this trade was looking even worse. And then it got down to about $15.50 this morning. But now it has rallied. It's pretty much unched, $15.74. So it's back to where it was when he got the stock, at least. So he's not out anymore on the stock, but he is already out about $1.5 million on the puts. Mr. Meatball, do you concur with that? And also, what are your thoughts? Do you think maybe we're in for a new regime change here, a new era where we're starting to see these line in the sand puts start to get put to you?
Yeah, there's definitely some pressure on the market as a whole. We continue this kind of 2 steps down, 1 step up type of trading. And yeah, you're going to see some of these lines in the sand hit the line in the sand. And, the question is it going to be like the Bugs Bunny, Yosemite Sam line in the sand where Yosemite Sam walks across and then falls down a cliff? Because it definitely feels like that it has potential for that type of trading.
We already kept an eye on those, unfortunately. Unfortunately, no joy there. Let's see if our final name here in the Odd Block today can bring us a little bit more happiness. Once again, we're going back to that January 31st show, so not too long ago, listeners. Another line in the sand put, this time in Ginkgo Bioworks Holdings, ticker symbol DNA. You don't have to tell you the ticker, the name. It's a biotech. And let's see. At the time, we profiled the 5 puts, so this is not an expensive name, going up nearly 10,000 times, 9,025 times, right on the bid for 40 cents. Pretty juicy vol, triple digits vol on this. The stock was $5.50 when this went up, so didn't seem like craziest of puts. Wasn't our favorite, but it wasn't the craziest. And yet again, listeners, maybe a bit of a omen of things to come. We shall see. Another line in the sand getting crossed. 2 for 2 here on the show today. The stock closed on expiration, listeners, $4.65. Unlike our last friend, though, it still closed within his margin of error, within the amount of juice he sold those puts for. So he still ended up making a whopping nickel on the trade. But let's hope, again, he wanted the stock because he ended up getting himself some. And it looks like the stock, this morning they were kind of wearing it again. The stock was about 30 cents lower. It was about $4.35. Looks like it has rallied a little bit since then. But so he's not exactly winning on the stock leg either. So ended up, I guess you can say, kind of scratching on the options side. And then the stock getting lower. Again, hopefully he's enjoying the stock because he's got himself some. Mr. Meatball, 2 for 2 here on our line in the sand puts, sir. What do you think? Is this an omen of things to come?
Yeah, I mean, the market has moved further and faster than I think a lot of people anticipated, despite the fact that it hasn't really moved that hard. And yeah, there could be more downside. I was just kind of reviewing what happened in the Gulf War, and we've got another potentially 10% down. And VIX futures have been in backwardation for 7 trading days straight. These line in the sand puts, they work until they don't, and then it can become like a waterfall of being put to. So you're going to have a lot of people that need to make some decisions here, and it could be selling the stock, it could be unwinding the puts, but it could add another layer of potential pressure to the stock market and to names like this. So, as great as everything looks, I don't know if now is the time to be putting in those lines in the sand.
I think our 2 victims, compatriots here today would probably agree with you. You know who's always agreeable? It's Uncle Mike. So let's get to him. A little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
Ooh, that music was really jacked in my headphones from the Red Dawn music earlier. But you know what? It was worth it. The Red Dawn music. Pretty awesome. All right, let's go out to the Unckless Mike. Still on the fence about forgiving you about never having seen that epic film, but that's a conversation for another day. Mr. Uncle Mike, it is strategy block time. I got a feeling, I don't know, I'm feeling something about buying a ton of out-of-the-money calls. Is that what you got on board for us today, sir?
I mean, why not? How
why
can
not?
I go wrong?
All the college fund, 5 Delta calls. Let's do it.
How can I possibly go wrong? No, what I want is, I do want to talk about calls today. And so what I want to go through today is oftentimes covered calls are mistaken as for being a hedge. And they kind of are and they kind of aren't, but they're not a real hedge. So here's where I'm going with them. Let's say that you own XYZ stock. It's always trading at $50 a share, and you sell the 55 covered call, and you collect $1 in premium for that. Well, that's fine. If the trade makes sense based on what you're looking to do, that's great. And let's say that the stock goes down $1 from 50 to 49, and the option in theory expires worthless. Well, by that methodology, your covered call financed your loss, and so you're still at break even in theory. But keep in mind, a stock going from 50 to 49, that's like a paper cut, and the appropriate medical treatment for a paper cut, if any, is a Band-Aid. And so the covered call can act like a Band-Aid. Now, let's say that the stock were to go from 50 to 28, then that dollar really doesn't seem like it's doing that much. And that's like putting a Band-Aid on a severed jugular. And so when something like that happens, it doesn't work very well. So just have the understanding that selling a covered call, if you're looking for it as a hedge, it's going to be a Band-Aid hedge at best. Now, granted, let's say that you're selling call after call after call, month in, month out. Maybe after a year, you get $8, $9 on an actual premium for doing that same scenario that I just mentioned. That's great. But understand also that if it were to go down far enough, that $8 still isn't going to help you as much as it could if the stock were to go down significantly, like from the 50 to 28 level that I had mentioned. So understand that when selling a covered call, it's kind of a hedge, but it's a Band-Aid at best. And so in the markets with which we're in right now, if you're not fine taking on the downside risk of holding out on the stock or maybe selling more calls as it goes down, whatever the case may be, then this is not the good market that you want for selling covered calls. When in our triple income approach, what we are doing right now is we are selling covered calls, of course, but we're okay riding out downturns like we did during the COVID downturn in March of 2020, and like we have been doing for years, quite frankly. And we're prepared for that. And so we're not hedged on it from the downside. Now, we have our hedge strategic night where we're using puts. And if you're looking to hedge yourself to the downside to where you want to make sure that you're protected from the stock going from 50 to 28 or 50 to 10, whatever the case may be, then you need to consider using a put option in some way, shape, or form. So for the strategy block today, have the understanding that covered calls can be a hedge, but they're a Band-Aid hedge at best. And right now there's a war going on. And in my opinion, if you're looking to hedge, wars need more medical treatment than Band-Aids. And that's the strategy block for today.
As we keep on rolling, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
Looking at our live chat, looks like we got Options Queen said she forgot to guess on Friday for volatility views. She wants to put her VIX guess in now and wants to know if that's cheating. I don't know. Looks like our chat is kind of iffy on it too. You got to do it. Got to do it during the show. I mean, it's kind of now you got a whole weekend behind you. You got all this Putin information in your back pocket. You have a little bit more of an informed decision than the rest of us did on Friday. But that, I'm going to leave it up to the Secret Club folks. They're a nice bunch. If they allow it, then perhaps we shall. What do you already won a prize just last week. You were ridiculously precise. So maybe you miss a week. Funny stuff nonetheless. We appreciate the spirit. I'll leave it up to the good folks there to decide. Speaking of what you folks decided, we asked you guys last week, kind of a last minute question of the week, given everything that's going on out there in the world. What do you guys think would be the lingering financial impact, if any, of this Ukraine invasion? Will it be just kind of an invasion blip, or is this going to turn into something a little bit longer, maybe an insurgency that drags on for a couple of years? Gave you those choices: a few days, a few weeks, a few months, or a few years. And as it came down to the wire, 42.2% of you choosing a few weeks. So far, you're right. Again, we don't know, obviously, but so far, you're right. Definitely not a few days. I think we're going to be past that point. Only 31.1% saying that. Either way, most of you were leaning towards close to 75% saying this is going to be a short-term phenomenon. Only 15.6% saying a few months and 11.1% of you saying a few years. I was in the more cynical, longer-term camp. I hope to God I am wrong. I hope these rumors of a detente, of a talks actually materialize into something, but yeah, interesting that you folks are very, very short duration on. I'm not sure if I'm buying what you're selling, but hey, this is one where I'm happy to be wrong. Let's go around the horn and let's get what everyone else is keeping an eye on here until we gather here together on Thursday. Let's go out to the greasiest of meatballs. Mr. Meatball, sir, what is on your radar as we kind of all linger on a Ukrainian precipice, sir?
Yeah, it's kind of what's going to happen with oil, what's going to happen with nat gas. Are there more escalations? And, how does this all play out? Then we have non-farms at the end of the week. We have CPI next week. We get the week of expiration, Mark, is going to be bananas. I don't know if you've looked ahead. We have a Tuesday VIX expiration, something that happens, once every 7 years or something like that. We have the Fed on Wednesday, and we've got quadruple witching on Friday. I would be trading with all of that in mind right now because there is some real potential for things to just completely blow up, especially if things start to worsen in Ukraine. That the week of expiration has been a soft week for a while. You give the market an excuse to sell off ahead of that. and who knows where things could go. I'm not bullish.
Does not sound like you are bullish at all. Let's go then to our resident optimist, our resident ray of sunshine. Mr. Uncle Mike, what are you keeping an eye on until our Thursday show? And perhaps corollary to that, are you still bullish, sir? Is the perma bull taking a hiatus?
I'm always bullish, but I've been non-bull. I've been on the sidelines since we went negative for the year. I mean, I still have a couple of deltas going just because I kind of have to, but my rules are that if the market's negative on the year, then I got to stay more on the sidelines. So I try not to over bullish myself when we are down on the year. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, the exposure that I have in the market right now, for the most part, is all in buy and hold things. So I'm going to buy and hold and stick to my plan. So with that, what I'm watching going into the weekend or going into for the rest of the week, just watching we had a little bit of a rally in the 10-year today. So seeing if that can continue to play out, watching how we continue to react to sell-offs and buyers continue to come in, and just watching and waiting to see if and when that stops happening. It's going to be interesting to where if we have a sell-off overnight, sometime as this Ukraine thing plays out, what's going to happen at some stage where the buyers don't come in the morning? So if the buyers keep coming in until they don't, when are they going to stop? That's what I'm watching for. So to say that I'm uberly bullish right now would not be the case, even if the markets were technically positive on the year.
No more uber bullish for our Uber Bull. That sounds like Red Dawn is very uber bullish. They fought their way back onto the show at the end there. They couldn't be caged. They said, dang it, we're playing again. So yes, let's roll out on Red Dawn. Why not? That music, unfortunately, listeners, means we have come to the end. At least this episode. Mark was talking earlier about crypto, what's going on there. I was only half joking over the weekend once we saw this Putin news that, we're going to see a nice pop in Bitcoin. Putin or the oligarchs or someone's going to be picking up a little bit of the old BTC. We did see a nice 8% pop earlier this morning, coming off a little bit of that now. You want to know more about what's going on? Crypto, vol, all the madness out there, Bitcoin, ETH, the skew, the vol, the unusual activity, all that cool stuff and a whole bunch more. Stay tuned. Crypto rundown coming up in about exactly an hour here on the network. Before we do that, let's go back around the horn. Let's go back out to the greasiest of meatballs. Mr. Meatball, sir, folks want to hit you up. In fact, a little birdie telling me maybe we get a double dose of the meatball. You're joining us tomorrow. Is that rumor true, sir?
I heard a little birdie say I may be talking to the Option Insider tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it.
Uh-oh. So the crazies get at you. I like it. So listeners, start getting those questions in now. For the greasiest of meatballs, hard to believe we're at episode, I don't know, whatever it is, 40. And finally, the Meatball joining us in there. Better late than never. Mr. Meatball, in between now and then, they want to check out all of your great content. Where should they go? What should they do?
Go to optionpit.com and check us out. We're always writing content on the VIX, laying out what we see, and trying to help people make money and navigate this market.
There you go, optionpit.com. If you got questions for the greasiest of meatballs, you start getting them in through your members hotline, through the live chat, everything else, because we're going to be going live with the Meatball. I got a feeling I'm going to talk a little bit of vol tomorrow, just, I don't know, to go figure. So start getting those questions in now. Should be a fun one. We're going to twist the knife over there on the old hot seat. Someone who just survived the hot seat, maybe he's got some pro tips for the Meatball. He just did it himself. He is the unklest of Mike's. I can speak from authority afterwards. I do know there were some tears shed. There was a little bit of remorse. He was very sad and maybe beaten up a little bit afterwards. So maybe he could shed some words of wisdom. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, any parting words of advice for the Meatball as he dives into the hot seat? And also, where can folks find you if they want to learn more?
It's all nonsense. I love all the shows on the Options Insider, but I have to say that after doing that show of just being in the hot seat, you go in directions you don't think you're going to go, and it's a very... You wouldn't think that a one-on-one interview show would be that entertaining and that good, but it's a very good show. Tune into the Meatball tomorrow. You won't want to miss that. In terms of where you can go to learn a little bit more about what I do as a financial advisor, check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. Always looking for more option block clients. Happy to have a conversation with anyone if you're looking for an advisor who works in the option space. I put out content as often as I can. Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. TOSAW. Follow me on YouTube. I'll be sending out videos once a week for all of 2022. Another one's about to go live here in the next day or two. And check out my blog on my website as well, articles as well. So that's where you can find me.
Check the man out at Mike TOSAW on Twitter. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go for more content there. Like I said, get those questions in now. Hot seat coming up tomorrow with the greasiest of meatballs. Later on today, a little less than an hour now, we got all the crypto madness unfolding, so stay tuned for that. Should be fun. Of course, boot camp, OPR, Wednesday, your double dose of education. Then we're back again on Thursday. Let's hope maybe some little less madness on the screens. We shall see. Back on Thursday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.